You are here with By the Cover. Today we're going to be reviewing The Night Parade by Ronald Malfi. This was 398 pages and took me 4 days to read. This review will contain spoilers, so if that's not something you want to hear, go ahead and click off now. My rating of this book is a 9.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed this book. Since there was more that I enjoyed of this book than disliked about it, I'll mention what I disliked about this book first. The only portion I really disliked in this book was the very beginning up to about page 80. A lot of that is the primary character, whose name is David. He's the father, and you have the daughter, whose name is Ellie. And they're basically traveling on the road. A lot of those pages are filled with David telling the child to shut up and the child asking questions. I don't like when kids ask questions, so I certainly don't like reading a dynamic where a parent's telling a kid to shut up and the kid is just asking questions continuously. It just makes me think the kid's annoying and the dad's an asshole. So I didn't like that dynamic. That dynamic changes later in the book after the characters are developed a little bit, and you kind of see why it was that way to begin with. And given the situation they're in, I can understand that. It just wasn't fun for me as a reader to have to go through that, so I didn't particularly love those pages in the book. The other thing I slightly disliked, but again, further the book went along, you come to appreciate some of these moments. It did seem a little slow in spots, which pay off later, so I don't have a big problem with that, but it's just something I noticed while I was reading it. After I finished the book, it made more sense, but as I was going through it, I did feel like parts of the book were slow. But for the most part, it went pretty quickly. So now what I liked about the book. This book is told basically in present day, and then you see flashbacks much like you would see in shows like The Walking Dead or pretty much any apocalyptic story. You start the furthest back in time, and then the timelines kind of work themselves together. And I thought, for the most part, all of the flashback scenes were very interesting, and I pretty much liked them all. As the timeline gets closer and closer, you get more pieces to the puzzle. Everything that doesn't make sense initially starts to make sense towards the end, which isn't always the case with a lot of authors. So I really appreciate that this story seemed very fleshed out and explanations for things were drawn together in the end. It made it a very satisfying read. I thought the plague was interesting, quite honestly scary, which was awesome, and kind of the mystery of how it spreads and things of that nature. I thought the book had a very great plot, and like I mentioned, it's very well developed. The end of this book was pretty heartbreaking and emotional, and it kind of left things open for what could have been a sequel if one had ever been written. This is my second Ronald Malfi book. The first one that I read was Bone White, which I did not enjoy as much, but I didn't think was a horrible book either. This one I really, really liked. So I'm looking forward to reading more Ronald Malfi in the future. I actually really liked all the characters in this book. There weren't any that I hated. It had great atmosphere, it had great plot, it had pretty good pacing. So I'd highly recommend this one if you don't mind apocalyptic tales. That's about it. Catch you guys later.